Hi everyone, my name is Heather Perry, and during this presentation I'm going to be talking about child abuse reporting and prevention, the school's responsibility. To begin with, what is it? Child abuse is one of the most serious threats to children in today's schools, as it affects their physical, emotional, and educational well-being. Under federal and state laws, school employees are required to be trained on how to be a mandated reporter, as they are required to report any suspected abuse or neglect that they may see or suspect in a child. When it comes to child abuse reporting and prevention, the schools have legal responsibilities that they must take. Schools that receive federal funding must have procedures in place that require educators to report any suspected child abuse and neglect when they have responsible suspicion, and it doesn't have to be definite proof. Teachers, counselors, administrators, coaches, and other school employees are considered to be mandated reporters, and if they fail to report any suspicion, they could be charged with criminal penalties, civil liability, or professional disciplinary action. Schools' ethical responsibilities. Educators spend a lot of time with their students and are entrusted with the care and well-being of their students, which allows them to establish relationships that let students feel comfortable talking to them about any abuse or seeking help when needed. If the opportunity arises, educators have the chance to be advocates for their students, even if the reporting creates tension with parents or guardians of the student. Professional responsibilities. Student safety should be the first priority, and reputation or personal discomfort should not play a role when dealing with child abuse involving their students. The first legal case that I searched is the Muir versus Salem-Keizer School District. This legal case occurred in 2017 at a school a part of the Salem-Keizer School District in Oregon. It involved Debbie Meyer, who was a counselor and was considered a mandatory reporter under Oregon law. A 17-year-old student told the counselor that her younger brother had molested her in previous years. After listening to the student's explanation, and based on the student's demeanor and Meyer's professional experience, she concluded that the conduct did not involve sexual abuse, and she did not report the incident to law enforcement or child protective services. A few years later, the student's father filed a complaint stating that Debbie Meyer did not uphold her duties of a mandatory reporter after the student informed her about the incident. Meyer was terminated from her position for neglect of duty and insubordination. However, the Fair Dismissal Appeals Board reversed the dismissal and ordered her reinstatement, with the school district appealing against them. Why is this case important to educators? This case demonstrated how school employees' mandatory reporting obligations are based on reasonable belief of abuse using professional judgment when assessing situations. Employees must understand the risk they can face if they fail to report suspected abuse and highlights how important it is for school boards to ensure they are offering their employees effective training and clear reporting policies when it comes to being a mandatory reporter. The second legal case I researched was the State versus James Bull case. This legal case occurred in 2018 at a public school in Washington involving Tanya James Bull, who was a public school teacher at a school in Washington when her 3 daughters stated that their stepdad had sexually abused them in their home. James Bull did not immediately report the suspected abuse, and when the state became involved, she was charged with 3 counts of failing to comply with Washington's mandatory child abuse reporting law. The Washington Supreme Court stated that a teacher's mandatory reporting obligation must have a connection to the teacher's professional role. Since her daughters were not her students, and she learned of the alleged abuse at home as a parent and not in her professional role as a teacher, the mandatory reporting statute for professional school employees did not apply to this situation. Why is this case important to educators? This case is important for school employees to be aware of, as it explains how a mandatory reporter's duty has to be connected to their professional role and not their private life. Educators are required to report suspected abuse when the information is given to them as an employee and regarding their relationship with children. The third legal case I researched was the CW versus Piedmont City School District. This legal case occurred in 2026 at Piedmont High School in Alabama involving CW, who was a 15-year-old freshman football player. He was subjected to severe hazing by his teammates as they were charged with several incidents describing sexual assault. CW claimed that the school officials and the football coach were aware of the harassment that had occurred but failed to stop it. After reports were made, the school officials and coach responded in a poorly way, and the Piedmont City School District was sued by CW under Title IX and civil rights law. Why is this case important to educators? This case is important for educators to be aware of, as it reinforces the expectations that mandatory reporters have and how important it is to ensure effective training is being offered, as failure to act on suspected cases can expose schools to both federal civil rights liability and state-level child protection violations. This case also follows under the Child Abuse and Prevention reporting in schools, as hazing can overlap with child abuse, as it can be considered the same as child abuse or neglect. If the school officials and coach were aware of this incident happening, they were still held responsible for reporting it, as they were mandatory reporters. When any staff member has a reasonable suspicion of any abuse or neglect, it is required by law to be reported to Child Protective Services or law enforcement.